Hey everybody, this is Dale, and I am back, which may or may not be a good thing. But I've been traveling a lot lately with family and friends. Not gonna lie, it's been awesome. Anyway, back in the shop, and I'm gonna make some Christmas presents. So anytime you can make something in the shop, it's fun. But when you're making gifts for people that you love, it's way more better. So here we go. Okay, so here's the design. I've got some spare maple, and so that's the white. And then I've got a ton of spare koa wood, but it's thin, so it's not exactly suitable for making a cutting board. But I'm going to trim the sides of it with the koa wood. That's the dark stuff. I'm going to put a handle on it. And then on one side, I'm going to put in what they call a juice groove. So that's the plan right now. Okay, so here's the layout. Here's the maple, the pieces of koa that I'll glue together, and I'll cut them off here to put the handle across. And I've decided for two reasons that I'm going to just put the juice groove in the maple, not in the koa. One, because I'm going to have to trim these off, which is going to stick out, and it won't fit into this juice groove jig that I bought from Rockler. So I put this piece of white maple in there, and this right here is the groove. So the center is about right there, which puts it a little farther away, far away from the edge. I'd like to get it closer to the edge. So I'm going to move the center of the groove a 1/4 inch down so that the edge comes to that pencil mark right there. And in order to do that, so this is a test piece that I'm going to use before I put the maple in there. I milled out some 1/4 inch spacers on all sides, and so hopefully when I tighten that jig down, the groove will be where I want it to be. The other thing I wanted to explain is they provide a bushing. You need a plunge router. I bought mine about 20 years ago or so. And so Rockler provides you with this blue and gray piece that screw onto this metal piece, which is supposed to come with your router. So it took me about a half an hour digging around through the garage, and I found the bag with the original parts, and that was in there. So that's good. So I just had to find screws to fit in there and attach it to the plunge router. And away we go. So here is the test piece that is centered into the into the Rockler jig. Kind of took a little figuring out how to do this. Basically, you have to loosen up opposing corners and snug it in slowly. It took probably 4 or 5 iterations to get it tight. And then even then, I had to use a bar clamp going across each side to cinch it down because it kept wanting to relax. But I think I got it in. And then these right here are to hold it close to the workbench so it won't slide around. If you have a spare corner of a workbench, you can probably use clamps. That's what they show on the instructions. You can see the clamps there holding those things down. Anyway, I just screwed them in with wood screws. So here we go. So here's what the juicer groove router bit looks like, kind of a bullnose thing. And then this is what the Rockler guide bushing looks like when it's mounted on a router, on a plunge router. All right, here we go. Okay, little snag. I was just kind of seeing how this thing worked, and I was moving it along, and it runs into the corner pieces. So I think what I need to do is take this brown plate off of my router. I'm going to give that a shot. thought was just going to be a simple video of making a cutting board has kind of turned into a review for the Rockler juicer jig. So this thing is just, you can see how small that bushing is, and it's just it's very wobbly, so it's hard to keep it parallel to the board as you're sliding it. That's one thing. Two is, you know, there was bolts. There was a bolt that went into this, and a bolt went into that, and I think this thing the frame was lifted up a little bit, which made it hang up on these corner pieces. So I took those bolts out, and it's still pretty solid, and it seems to work a little bit better. But mainly that bushing is just it just sticks. So I don't know if you can see. Kind of hard to see some of the starts and stops and such that I had when I was making that first test cut. So I had some Teflon tape left over from another project, so I put a piece on this bushing and cut a hole out, and then I laid it out on the board where that bushing's going to glide, kind of in the pattern where I'm going this way, I'm going clockwise, so that it doesn't run into these seams as it comes down. So I'll give that a shot. Well, here we are, 2 passes at an 1/8 inch apiece for a total depth of 1/4 inch. And it was tough. I mean, the Teflon tape really helped, but that thing is just inherently stable on that big router. But what's interesting is it looks like almost the same router they show on their instruction booklet, so maybe it's just me. And in all fairness to the juicer jig, this test piece of wood is not exactly smooth, and there's a big old knot right there. So that probably didn't help either, but this definitely takes some practice. I determined that as I'm going along, I'm tilting it back a little bit this way so the front doesn't kind of dig in. So I was tilting it that way, and then I tilt it this way a little bit, just a little, as I went over, and that seemed to help a little bit too. Other little pro tip, well, amateur tip, is make sure these things are out of the way of your frame as it comes through. So I had to remove and readjust those things. So anyway, I think it came out pretty good. It wasn't easy, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot on one of those test pieces of maple. We shall see. Oh, and the other thing is, these spacers worked great. I got the groove where I want it, more towards the edge of the wood. All right, ready to do the maple. So I've got the stabilizers out of the way, so the frame on the router is not going to run into them. You can see how they stick up here. And maybe that's a function of this thing being 3/4 inch thick instead of something thicker, but anyhow, got them out of the way. And the other thing I did was these spacers. I initially made them the exact same height as the piece of wood, another 3/4 inch. And I'm wondering if maybe the router was getting hung up on an edge there between these two pieces. So I just went and trimmed an 1/8 inch off, so they're sunk down a little bit. They can't get in the way, so we'll give it a try. All right, success, I think. Got the groove in. There's a few little burn marks that I can sand out. But overall, it looks pretty good. And by the way, I didn't put Teflon tape on the board this time because I was right. This is smooth. And that test piece I had was pretty rough. So I think that was the problem there. But I did keep the Teflon on the router. But that said, this jig takes practice. It's pretty wobbly when you have a big plunge router like I got. A lot of weight there. So it takes a lot of concentration, but it does work. All right, the juice grooves are finished, kind of. Still got to get the burn marks out. But yeah, that juice jig, how do I put this? It was difficult and disappointing. Kept getting hung up. You can see right there. I'm not really sure what was going on there. And we got a little whoop-de-doo right here. Figure that out, what was going on there. So needless to say, I won't be using that jig again, but these are gifts to my two sons, and let's just say they got some character, one of a kind. So on to the next step. Okay, here's the latest progress. So this is one of the boards. The two strips of koa on either side were glued together previously, and now they've just been glued to the maple, and it's in the guest bathroom because it's been cold and wet, and I can get away with it because my wife's out of town. So this will be ready in a couple of hours. So while that cutting board's drying, I went ahead and trimmed these sides flush. And the handle is going to go from here to here. So I'm going out at 3/4 of an inch for the handle to go on. So I've got a trim using a round over bit to kind of soften up all the edges. And then I've got a lot of sanding to do. And then I just bought this tool from Rockler that's supposed to be able to help me get the burn marks and everything out of the juice groove. So we'll see how that goes. And here we go with another step. So it's all glued up, and I've got to sand all this rough stuff down, make it smooth. These are glue marks left that actually peeled the paint off of the bar clamps that I had on there. So I should have put a spacer in there, but I think they're going to sand out. So I'll show you when it's done. So here it is sanded. This is the same side I showed before, and it came out. This wood, this koa is just beautiful. One thing I should add is that when milling this stuff, this koa, there's so many swirls and reversals of grain direction, which you can kind of see right here, that when you put it through a planer, a lot of times you'll get tear out. So I mill them thicker than I need to, and then for finishing, I don't throw them through the planer anymore. I use a sander. It's slow, but it's safer, and just comes out beautiful. So got a little bit more to do. So on this side is going to be the handle, so I'll trim off, leave 3/4 of an inch sticking on each side for the handle. And on this side, I'm going to trim them on the table saw here. This is my table saw sled. And I'll inch up on it. I'll cut it maybe 1/8 of an inch too long, and then I'll sneak up on it so that it's flush with the maple. So it's trimmed up. I'm going to put a handle. I'm going to use a trim router to round over all these edges and soften them up. One thing I wanted to show you about this koa. So its previous life, koa, by the way, I think it's protected wood now. It's very hard to get. But its previous life was as wall cover in a kind of a famous and beloved restaurant in town. And they had to move locations, and before that building they were in got demolished, the owner went in and reclaimed all this koa wood, set in storage for a number of years, and they knew I did woodworking, so they gifted it to me. So I figure the best way to honor the heritage is by giving it away to friends to make projects with, and just give me a photo of what it looks like for free. But I'm planning on keeping these nail holes. Those are the nail holes from its original life when it was nailed into the wall. So I'm going to keep those. I placed them on the edge so they wouldn't get food clogged in them. But anyway, it's kind of a little side note there. Okay, so here's my router, and that bit on the end, it's called a round over bit. So it's just going to make a kind of a rounded edge to everything. Okay, one more thing about the wood, and then I'll shut up. So the maple in the middle, my brother and I were refurbishing the house we grew up in to get it ready to sell, and there were these old breadboards that pulled out from the counter, hidden, and then you just slide them out, and they were breadboard, and they're in pretty bad shape. So I had some breadboards made. But it was during COVID, and they didn't get there before the house sold. So I brought them home and repurposed them. And what I didn't know when I cut them, if you can see those nails, but they were hidden nails in the thing to hold some of the pieces together. So I left them there. Little history. All right, the project is done. Getting ready to wrap them up. So took them to a local engraver and had initials engraved on the top there and my initials on the bottom. So this is the juicer side, and then this is the other side. So project complete. I'm not going to put any finish on them or anything. I'm going to leave them natural, just like they are. So hopefully they'll hold up, and hopefully they'll make some good presents. And Merry Christmas, everybody. Signing out.